Hey everybody, it's Greg Rice. We're here in Harrisville,
That's
up in
right.
the northwest corner with Mr. Joe Luca, realtor at Remax Preferred in Cumberland. And Joe, we've known each other 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And this is our second time sitting down.
That's right.
Joe was kind enough to have me on his radio show. Tell us about that. That's on WNRI, right?
Correct. Yep. Radio show. This is our 10th year. We've been on WNRI every Tuesday night, 6 to 7 p.m. And it's creatively called the Joe Luca Real Estate Show. And it's designed for the consumer. And I just try to put valuable content out there for the consumer so they can learn about the process of buying and selling real estate, what it's like to own real estate. And what I've been doing this year is celebration of my 10th year, kind of paying it forward. Any businesses that like to come on, I will have businesses on at no charge so they can talk about their business.
Which you did for me in Nexus.
Exactly.
Which I
Right.
appreciate.
Local, if it's contractors, I had Superior Comfort Heating and Cooling on this past week. I've had siding companies, contractors, restaurants. So I like to just basically highlight locally owned small businesses and give them an opportunity to not only talk to my listeners, but if they want to record it, they can push it out on their social media, etc. So,
And that's 1 hour, right?
right.
And how much of that hour is actual meat that you're talking, that you have?
It's pretty much all, straight up all talking about the subject at hand. And it's always about real estate. There are certain common themes. I mean, the real estate market has been pretty strong. But when we have new important issues that pop up, like this past week, we reached a new high for median price of a single family home in Rhode Island.
$494?
$494,000. So we're knocking on $500,000, $500,000
For average.
for middle of the road, single family home in Rhode Island. Multifamilies, $550,000. Condos are still, they're not as high as they were, but they're still well over $300,000. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll talk about the implications that has on home buyers.
Yeah.
And then I try to give some tips for people to basically how to weather the process of buying a home. Selling a home is generally easy in this economy. It's a seller's market.
Yes.
But if you're a buyer, you have to have a lot of intestinal fortitude. You have to be focused, resilient. You have to be prepared to look at lots of houses, submit lots of offers before you get any that are going to be accepted. And then sometimes you have an offer that's accepted, you have a home inspection, it's like, oh my gosh, we discovered something we didn't see before. What do we want to do? Do we want to back out? Do we want to continue? And that's why it's important to have a good, experienced realtor on your side, because they can be the kind of voice of reason and perhaps know how to negotiate things out.
Yes.
We have there are a lot of good realtors out there, and I always give shout outs to my realtor friends. And Emilio DeSpirito at Engel & Volkers is our common friend. Emilio does a great job. Someone who gives good advice to clients, because that's important. Because
selfless advice.
Right. Selfless advice. Exactly.
Which is the hardest to come by.
That's right. A good realtor will provide guidance and information that does not consider the compensation that the realtor may or may not receive as a result of that advice. And, we in the business, we help people buy and sell homes, multiple homes every month. The average homeowner, 2, 3, maybe 4 homes in a lifetime. And it changes, the process changes. So they need to rely on us to add value and give them guidance so they don't lose value during the process.
And before we move on, we're at one of your listings.
Yes, so this is a great story. So we're at one of my listings. We're at 45 Mill Pond Village in Harrisville, Rhode Island. Harrisville is a village within the town of Burrillville.
Beautiful end unit.
Yep.
Beautiful development situation here. It looks like it's all landscape, snow plowed. Everything's nice.
Exactly. It's got single level hardwoods throughout. Now, this unit, how I came upon this unit was I had 2 buyers that wanted to buy another unit in this development. They both put the offer in. Obviously only one person gets it. One of my buyers did it, the other one didn't. So I said, you know what, I'm going to work hard for my buyer to see if I can find another unit that's for sale. So I canvassed the area, solicited all of the homeowners in the area, and lo and behold, we found another unit.
Just knocking on the door?
Actually,
or mailers?
Gotcha. Exactly. And I had previously spoken to this gentleman, the owner of this unit. We had a lot in common. I grew up in North Providence. He was a retired policeman from North Providence. We,
Gotcha.
he knew my family. So when he received my postcard, he called me up and he's like, Joe, I'm really thinking about putting my condo on the market, and I would love for you to be able to, list it for me. So it worked out great. So we have this, brought my buyer in who didn't get the other one, and she's, not ready to spend the amount of money you need to get this unit.
How much for average condos now?
The average condo is about $335,000, but this is kind of a premium in the sense it's a newer one, it's a good size one, and it's single level.
Right.
Single levels are always more expensive. It has a garage that's attached. It has a partially finished lower level.
And seclusion too, like it's nice buffer back here.
Yeah, nice and private. You can go out on the deck in the backside and have a coffee or a glass of wine or a beer, whatever you do, and just enjoy nature.
That's right.
But you're still close enough to restaurants in the area and local shopping and things like that. So
fireplace too, which
right, you've got a fireplace here.
Comforts of home at a condo price. I don't know what's the ticket.
It's priced at $415,000, but you've got 2 good-sized bedrooms, a bath and a half, attached garage, an integral garage, and great neighbors. And
Move-in
you don't
ready
have to.
too.
Right, exactly. Move-in ready. You've got nice newish appliances, and the management company does a great job taking care of these units. And you can tell just by driving through. I mean, the landscaping is great. Everything is well maintained.
No nonsense.
The roads, the driveways are all well preserved. They seal them every several years. So these are the things that you want to look for when you're looking at a condominium. And something else you want to look at is the budget, if there are any special assessments coming up, and of course a good realtor, if you're a buyer, they will work with you and obtain this information on your behalf.
So let's talk about $400,000. Charles Street in Providence.
Right.
I saw a property. It's boarded up, Joe.
Yeah.
It looks like maybe there's a flood or a fire. Maybe a 3 or 4 unit. That's what the market's given us for multi-mixed use right now. Who can buy that? And then how much? Probably another $250,000 in repairs.
Right. Yeah.
What do you feel about that?
Well, it's my heart breaks in one sense. Because I'm just thinking cheapest crow. When I was 22, 23 years old buying my first multifamily house, if it were priced at that, and then I've got to spend another couple of $100,000. First of all, the time. We don't have. If you had a magic wand and you could zap it and the work is done. Okay, that's one thing. But you've got to pay the $400,000.
At least a year of stuff.
And you've got a year of no income coming in, but you're responsible for the debt service.
100%.
So that's a challenge. So now, it's all done a year later. Let's assume that they're 3-bedroom units for all 3 of those units. Okay, so maybe if you get $2,000 a month. I mean, the median rent in this town of North Providence is $2,600.
Really?
Yeah, it's higher than Cumberland, which is surprising. Wow. So let's assume you get $2,000, $2,100 a unit. So now you're looking at $6,000 a month in gross income. Knock out probably $1,000 a month for property taxes.
Oh yeah.
Maybe another $400 a month for insurance, and then you've got to worry about your debt service. And of course, the interest rates as high as they've been, that makes it that much harder. Multifamily homes have higher interest rates than single-family homes, and if it's an investment property, that is one you're not living in, the rates are going to be higher again as well. So, you could be, rates now are down a little bit below 7%, like in the high 6s, low 6s if you're looking at an FHA or a VA mortgage. You've got $6,000 of gross income. We backed out about $1,400 of expenses. So now you're down to what, $4,600. Hopefully your mortgage will be less than that, so that you can pay the mortgage and then pay maybe a little bit extra on the mortgage so you pay it off sooner.
Strip that down, right?
Yeah.
But it's just like that's the starting point for an investor. I mean, when I got started 10 years ago, it was $50K a door.
Yeah.
Buying a 4 unit for $200,000, and they were occupied.
Right.
Like they needed painting, flooring, but they were habitable.
Right.
So now it's like people want to get involved, and there's so much information, so many people on YouTube and Spotify telling you how to do it right. People are ready to do it, just the market is not allowing it.
Yeah.
So I don't know how people are getting going, and I think that you need to consider owner occupying at least a 2 unit maybe for your first house.
Right.
Just to augment these crazy numbers and give you a lily pad to jump from in the future. You can buy the single family for $600,000. You can live in Western Cranston. You both could afford it, husband and wife.
Yep.
But then you're kind of like, in 5 years, like, oh, we've outgrown this, or the
And
kids.
you don't think you have to sell it to move on to the next one.
I know, and it's just you're kind of pigeonholing yourself if you're really dead set on the single family. So, are you seeing folks opt for multis to live in, or is it still like, oh, I can't do that?
Sometimes we are seeing that, but what I'm definitely seeing more of is what I refer to as intergenerational living, where you'll have, you've got the kids that are young, you've got the parents that are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and then the grandparents that may live there too. So you've got husband and wife income, and then you've got grandma's social security, grandpa's pension, or whatever.
Yep.
And so you have 4 streams of income to pay down and qualify for that mortgage. So then they can buy a house, it's 3 or 4 bedrooms, or buy a duplex.
In-law.
Buy something with that they can make into an in-law. Now, of course, an in-law, also known as an accessory dwelling unit, those they do not transfer with the home. They stay with the homeowner. So if I build a house and I have an in-law so that my sibling or my adult kids or my parents can move in, when I sell that to you, that in-law is not part of that transaction, because otherwise it would be like multifamily housing.
Gotcha.
And then you have a neighborhood that's zoned single-family homes. Those other folks aren't going to want to have a multifamily house next door. So it transfers as a single-family home. Then the new owner could say, I'm going to have my parents live with me. So then you would have to just get that variance once again.
So it doesn't go with the property.
Correct.
That's something I didn't know.
Yeah.
But obviously the structure is still there, and
Yeah.
you just have to maybe ask for permission.
Right.
Interesting. Now, how about I remember a couple of years ago, so many new agents and so many new loan officers.
Yep.
And it was like, younger than me. I'm 33, and it was people in their mid-20s that are sold or under contract 48 hours and sold in 3 days and blah blah blah. What do you say to those people now?
Well, I have to say, when you're selling a house that quickly, and as speaking as a professional, and then you're advertising it, sold the house in 24 hours, we had 72 offers, and it went over asking price. If I'm someone thinking about selling my house, I'm going to say, well, why would I ever hire someone to do that? If they sell that easily, if they just sell themselves,
right?
Why do I need a realtor? And the fact of the matter is, a realtor, there are like literally over 170 things that I do every time I list a property to add value to the transaction, to protect my client, the seller, so that they can receive maximum value and protect themselves from being negotiated down at some point in the transaction. And that's where I add value. Now, when houses are as expensive as they are, $494,000, if you make a mistake that's 5% error, that's what, $24,500? That's a lot of money. So it's incumbent upon the real estate professional, the realtor, to know what's going on in the market, to understand all aspects of a home when you list it, and then leverage the assets and market those. So that way you can target it. There's so much technology out there using AI and predictive analytics. We can target listings directly to the people who are looking for that type of a listing. So I don't have to, advertise it to 5,000 people. Maybe I just advertise it to 150 people who are looking for a condo in this section of Rhode Island, who are in this price point. So that's and things like that may take a little bit longer, but it's easier and less stressful. And one of the things that I offer my clients is, buyers and sellers, I try to shelter them from unnecessary anxiety and stress. Because if everything is perfect when you buy or sell a home, it's still stressful. You're packing up your life, putting it in boxes on a truck and moving from point A to point B. You have to worry about kids, getting them in school, you're changing a job, all of that, figuring out a new way to work. These are all stressors. And then if you have additional stressors from the negotiations, from the home inspection, from financing, things like that, it can be harrowing. What I try to do is I look at the long view when we list the house, when the transaction starts, and anticipate potential problems, and then communicate those to the people who could potentially help avoid those problems or solve the problem, answer the question before it becomes an issue. Because the worst thing you want is to have something develop right before closing and you need to ask for an extension.
Mm-hmm.
Now all of a sudden, oh, the buyer's rate lock is expiring. Oh, maybe the buyer loses a job next week. Now they can't buy the house.
Right.
Things happen. So it's very important that we try to stay on track as much as possible.
And your experience does that. And
Yes.
my point with my question before was new agents on the scene coming, trying to steal the thunder of the scene, bragging about the scene,
Right.
and just making it more ego driven than it is client
Yeah.
driven. I don't like that. I don't trust that, and I don't respect that, to be honest. I trust consistency.
Yeah.
So somebody like you's been doing it for how long?
Well, I've been a realtor since '06.
So almost 20 years.
Yeah.
Okay, how many transactions have you done in 20 years?
Yeah, I have no idea.
I don't even know, right?
I have no
But
idea.
that's
Lots.
the person that I would trust, right? If I'm like, all right, 25-year-old just out of college bragging online, or this guy, 20 years on the radio show, consistently giving the same advice and product, client focus, that's the difference. So when people say, oh, I hired my friend, or I hired my granddaughter, it's just like, okay, it's not wrong, right? We all need to get experience, but when you have the choice, to me, I go with who's been doing it long.
Yeah, and the thing is too, like when I post, and if I'm on my radio show, sometimes on my own radio show, I forget to plug myself, but it's not about me. I don't say, oh, I'm, the #1 realtor at Remax this week. I don't post that I don't post how many homes I sold last year.
Right.
I don't post my accolades, from Providence Business News or this. It's out there, people see it. But because if I sold 150 houses last month, I'm selling your house this month. All you care about is your house.
Mine.
You don't care about the other 150 I sold last month. I need to convey to you that I'm going to do a good job.
Correct.
And I'm going to take care of you. And my team, people that I work with, are also going to do a good
100%.
job. Because if I'm always talking about me, my brain can only focus on one thing at a time. If I'm focused on me, I'm not focused on my clients.
100%.
So,
That's an old school mentality.
yeah.
My generation, we lost that.
Yeah. Right. Well, yeah. Not all of your generation.
Well,
because you
there's a
didn't,
couple
so.
of us, but yeah, I learned from my father, I learned
Yeah.
from my grandparents, so I'm thankful for that. But now everybody's so it's such a me.
Exactly, and that's the thing. The way we are now with the phone. I'm texting, I'm social media, I'm this and that, and it's just like this. And the way the industry is changing right now, because of I don't want to get into it, but some federal lawsuits against the National Association of Realtors, it's changing the way that realtors have to communicate and interact with each other, and then communicate with their sellers and communicate with their buyers. And it's forcing them to not do this, not just text everybody. You have to sit down and you have to have a conversation. And I have to present papers to you and explain to you, these are required by law, and we need to go over these. Do you have any questions? I can't just email them to you, because if I email them to you, you're going to be overwhelmed.
Right.
And so what's going to happen is, I think the realtors who continue to be successful are going to be the ones who embrace the change and embrace the opportunity to communicate with clients and with each other. One of the things, MLS, we're not going to be allowed to publish in MLS how much the seller is going to be compensating the buyer's agent. So now, up until August 14th in Rhode Island, if there's a listing, it says, okay, buyer's agent will receive X%. In the case of this listing, it's 2%. Going forward, that whole field is going to go away. So now,
it's just omitted?
It's just omitted. It's not going to be there anymore. So now when another agent goes to look at it, they're not going to know if they're getting compensated. If they are, how much. So they're going to have to call me up and say, hey, Joe, I have a buyer interested in your condo at Mill Pond Village. Is the seller willing to pay buyer's agent commission? And then I'll say, yep, yes, they are. However, sometimes the seller may say, you know what, Joe, I don't want to pay the buyer's agent. I only want to pay you. In which case my answer would have to be, no, they're not. You're going to have to talk to your
Buyer?
buyer or try and include it in the transaction. And then that's a whole different discussion that everyone would have
Interesting.
instead of negotiations. But things are changing. So these changes are going to force realtors to have conversations with each other and then also to have conversations with their clients. And if you are confident in what you do and how you add value to the transaction, it'll be easy. You know, but if you're not, it's going to be a long learning curve.
So, all right. So say, let's do an example. Somebody calls up, says, all right, 45 mil pond, and you say hypothetically, no, unfortunately the seller's not offering a commission. So the realtor and their buyer go and sit down, and the realtor would say what?
They say, you know, Sarah, listen, I'd love to show you this condo, but, you know, the seller does not want to pay my side of the compensation. I can't work for free. You know, we had this conversation because hopefully the first time I met with my client, I had her sign a buyer's agreement, exclusive buyer representation agreement, at which time we would have gone over and I would have explained to her that, listen, I need to make at least X percent. So you have to be willing to pay me that. So I go back to her and I say, Sarah, look, the seller in this case doesn't, so you'd have to pay all of my compensation, which is that amount we talked about. So it'll be, you know, based on 2%, 3%, 2.5%, 1%, whatever we agreed to, of $415,000. That's how much I'm going to have to get paid at closing. Now, my client has the opportunity to pay me out of pocket. Okay. My client has the opportunity, if possible, to have it worked into closing costs, and then I would get paid with their lender. The lender, it's important to work with a lender who's willing to think outside the box. Or they could say, well, let's try this. We'll offer the seller the $415,000 plus X percent, 1, 2, 3%, and then that money will come back to pay the buyer's agent.
In the CD to
exactly, in the closing docs to right.
So they're financing it.
Right.
Which
so essentially
is negligible for them over 30 years.
Right. Now, where things could get challenging is, let's say this was priced at $415,000, and let's say there's nothing to justify a value higher than that, though, and it appraises at $415,000.
Gotcha.
Then the lender might come back and say to the buyer, "Listen, Sarah, it appraised at $415,000. I know you want to pay your agent 2% or 1% or whatever the number is, but we can't put it into the loan, so we're going to have to figure something else out here."
Gotcha.
So
what about like a seller credit? Would that work in it? Say, all right, we're going to offer you $425,000, $10K seller credit. So that's the $415,000. The $10K could go to the
as long as it appraises for the $425,000.
Gotcha. So the appraisal is key.
Right.
That can get tricky.
Yeah. So and that's a problem too now, because when you're looking at let's take a $400,000 home, and you're allowing 2% for closing costs, and then you need another 2% for the commission.
Yeah.
That's 20 G's. So
for somebody who might be putting down 3.5%,
right,
it's more than their down payment.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So there are going to be some challenges, but again, that's why myself and my team and my colleagues, we've been preparing for these changes for the past. What month are we in? This is July, since like February. Gotcha. We've been having weekly meetings talking about different scenarios. It's not in effect yet. It goes into effect August 14th in Rhode Island.
Okay.
So
August 14th.
Yep. That's when the MLS will no longer list compensation paid to the buyer's agent from the seller.
Gotcha.
So
expect some agents that have not prepared for this.
Absolutely.
Expect some kerfuffle.
Yeah, there are some agents, I was talking to some agents, and their brokers haven't even talked to them about this yet, so they don't even know.
So that's going to buck a lot of transactions. It's probably going to be a year of iron out.
Yeah.
But you're prepared.
Right, I'm prepared, and the challenging thing is that if the buyer's agent does not have the buyer sign an exclusive buyer agreement, illustrating how he or she is going to get paid, you're opening yourself up to potential legal issues down the road.
Big time.
So,
all right, a lot of info in a short amount of time. We got the wonderful seller who's baking in the sun right now, so we want to get it back in. Your final thought, Joe.
It's a great, the best time to buy a house like planting a tree was 10 years ago. The second best time like a tree is today, because the tight market is not going to be changing. We've been building too few homes for the past 15 years. And every year more people get married, they have kids, jobs, relocations, there are divorces, so there's always built-in demand for homes. And then you have, people just moving out of the house. They're not married, but they want to move out on their own and they're ready to buy a house. So the market, unless we have some major calamity, geopolitical calamity, we're probably going to be in a tight market for a good 5 to 10 years.
Agreed.
I don't see any people ask, Joe, when's the market going to crash? I don't see it happening. So if you're thinking about buying a home in the next 6 months, year, 2 years, whatever it is, get in touch with a good realtor, a full-time experienced realtor, right? You can certainly give me a call. And then I or that realtor will direct you to a good local lender who will help you out. Because you need a good lender who does a good job, because you want the listing agent to look at the pre-approval and say, oh, this is from Joe Baptista, this is from John Goldbeck, Don Miller, whomever. It's a known entity. Dave Campagnone does a great job. He gets deals done no one else can get done. Those are the types of lenders you want to have on your team.
And that can work out these new, buyer agency, commission and all that, and then closing attorney. So you're in great hands, and he has 2 of them.
There you go, right.
Awesome. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
And any folks that are interested in contacting you, how do they do so?
401-580-9797, voice or text. 401-580-9797. That's the best way to reach me.
And listen to you what day?
On Tuesday evening, 6 to 7 o'clock on WNRI 99.9 FM, 1380 AM. It's also uploaded as a podcast on Spotify.
Awesome.
And we rebroadcast the show Saturdays at 1 p.m.
Awesome. And any questions for me, put them in the comments field below, and we'll get right back to you. Once again, Joe Luca, the Irish guy from North Providence.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.